Welcome to another episode of the CPG Guys podcast. Our co-hosts, Shri Rajagopalan and Peter V.S. Bond, explore how brands and retailers engage with consumers online, in-store, and everywhere in between. And now, here are Shri and Peter.
Welcome everyone to this episode of the CPG Guys featuring Peter and Shri. Every week we're back again with a special guest focused on everything omnichannel, e-commerce, the in-store business model, and brands. And I want to remind all our listeners and viewers that you can find all our content on CPGGUYS.com. While you're there, take a look at our podcasts, which are downloadable across 15 plus platforms. And you can find that content on CPGGUYS.com. As you scroll down, you'll see you have Instagram, you have podcast platforms, you have a YouTube playlist, so you can click on the podcast platforms. But we'd love for you to leave us a review, a rating perhaps, on the Apple Podcast platform at tinyurl.com/Apple CPG Podcast. And we want to thank you for all the love you've shown us. When Peter and I started this 4 months ago, we didn't expect to grow organically this fast. And I'll just remind all our viewers, you did ask us for focusing more on e-commerce econometrics and the whole metrics of profit. And we are midway through a series and you have the opportunity to listen in. So please do chime in on the conversation. Today is actually a very special episode because I have a chance to reunite with a friend as well as a mentor. But before we get there, I want to welcome my co-host Peter Bond, who is the CRM expert, the loyalty expert, the data geek, if I may say so, and my partner on this journey of podcasting. Welcome aboard, Peter.
Shri, you are the Arthur to my Galahad, the apple pie to my a la mode vanilla ice cream, the notorious B.I.G. to my Tupac. That's an East Coast, West Coast thing. Anyhow, it's always a pleasure. My favorite part of the work week is doing these podcasts with you.
Don't get me singing, man. Biggie, 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 can't you see? So,
oh my God.
I will now welcome our special guest, who was actually my manager at my last CPG role in a brand at Revlon, and one from whom I've learned many virtues and skills: patience, perseverance, focusing on omni-channel versus e-commerce, and most importantly, how you shred apart and decompose an EBITDA. Welcome aboard, Catherine. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Well, first of all, I have to say your intro is a little scary, but I'm here, so I'll go on. Thank you for welcoming me, guys. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. So yes, my name is Catherine Lovisi, a mouthful. French-born, Italian blood, American by fight and love. Moved to this country 28 years ago and never left. I was supposed to be here for a summer actually and never left. 20 plus years in CPG in Latin America, North America, Asia, Pacific, Europe, I mean a little bit everywhere worldwide, and all price point. So from the most mass market to the highest and uber luxury. Spent a lot of time in L'Oreal, 18 years. Launched with Christian Louboutin, the beauty channel for uber luxury product with lipstick at $90. I know every time everybody looks at me like, what? $90 a lipstick? And finally at Revlon, which I left about 5 months ago. And here I am.
Notice I didn't mention all the companies she's worked for, and that's because I didn't want to pronounce Christian Louboutin in front of a French person. And now I got the pronunciation perfected. Christian Louboutin, and I can say it like a French. How about that? So Catherine, welcome aboard, first of all. And thank you so much for joining me. I mean, you've been an awesome mentor of mine personally, and now a friend as well in this journey of what we call CPG and brands, which really takes me to my first question for you, Catherine. And that is, of course, you spent time in global roles. You've touched many brands in the beauty sector, not just one: luxury, mass stage, the whole gamut one can imagine, fashion. And as you think through these, traditionally the way you and I are trained over the course of multiple decades is we've created brand P&Ls and we've created brands and storytelling all focused on making sure every single month we were able to meet our EBITDA goals. For those who don't know, I'm referring to profit and meeting the numbers every single week, and making sure that we never missed them, and doing what we could do ethically and the right way to make sure that we landed those numbers month over month basis. This year has been a very interesting and strange year because nobody could have predicted in January, when the AOP was put in play for every single brand in the industry, that a certain EBITDA, when it comes to June 30th and the early July board meetings, that those EBITDAs would be nowhere close near AOP or goals that people set during the course of the year, which might have also sounded very logical. We've been hit by a pandemic. A lot has changed for every single one of us, just how we see life in general and next steps. So if you're a brand, what happens next, Catherine? Do you just go back once this pandemic slows down, back into the office? Every single month we're arguing with each other over EBITDA and profit and the way we want to storytell brand messages to the consumer? Or is there so much more now in consumerism that pops up?
I think that it is the right question to ask ourselves, even though this has been an underlying quote unquote problem for years, if not decades. I think that the pandemic has been both tragic, I mean, clearly, but it has been a great teacher. It has forced us to realize that the system was not working. There is no more illusion that the system is working. So for me, the only way is to go forward and is to change. The answer is to double down. I think that we have to be more ambidextrous. I think that there is a need to manage the now, but also the transition to the future. And that means not only optimization, which is the name of the game in terms of crisis to protect your EBITDA, but it's also exploration. And obviously, we cannot do the better or the, let's just fix it. We have to leapfrog over all the things that are not working. There's so many things that are broken, and they're obviously broken, and has been that now nobody can hide behind anything. We need a strategic renewal. I know it's a big word. I know it means, many things to everyone, but at the end, I believe there is never a good time. But a crisis is an opportunity for a real deep transformation, because people, investor included, are desperate to see a positive future. I mean, you can see it with the stock market. It's completely detached to reality. You're asking yourself what type of medication those people are on, because please share the love. No, I'm kidding. But this is the perfect time right now to do this transformation. I mean, when you have people like, for example, Cuomo, I'm a New York City, true and true, 20 years. The guy says, we have what, $30 billion gap this year, but we have to build back better. And he asked for Bloomberg, he asked for Bill Gates, he asked for Eric Schmidt to come and help in terms of leaping forward, in terms of education, remote education, in terms of testing, in terms of public services, telehealth, et cetera, et cetera. And the corporation have to do the same thing. The brands have to do the same thing. We need to redefine we need to redefine what is success. First of all, success is not only EBITDA. And
well said.
To be honest, I'm not naive, you know me, and I've been in corporations that are for profit, so I know what it means. But EBITDA for redistribution for shareholder only is something that has been challenged by the #1 company in this country, which is Amazon, and they have done that for decades. So why are we not doing that globally? We know short-term decision hurt the brand, hurt the consumer, hurt the planet in general. We need to think differently. We need to satisfy the shareholder, but the shareholder doesn't mean just the stockholder. It's an entire ecosystem, which includes employee, supplier, community, and future generation as well. I think that we need to understand that when we make decisions, and this means that the incentive system also has to be different. One thing that is very interesting to me is that it's actually sarcastic, because human life expectancy has never been longer in the history of humanity, right? Where, depending on the countries, if I'm American, it's 76. If I'm French, I'm 82. But yet, our vision has never been shorter. 3 months, if not the month.
I was going to say 3 months is long term in my
Well, it's because of industry. That's why 3 months. But the month, I mean, in the company, it's the week, but in the month, if it's not the quarter. This cannot continue. And I sincerely believe that the winners will be the one that really think about long-term, multi-stakeholder, and that's it. Long-term, multi-stakeholder. Not only the guy that has the stock for the day and it's not for the quarter.
And the word of the day has been born, multi-stakeholder.
Well, I didn't invent that one. But I think that one thing that is interesting is the long-term stock exchange, which is an initiative that has been launched, I think, 2 years ago by Eric Rice, who is the guy who wrote Lean Startup, you know, the startup way.
Yep.
Right. I think that this is a very interesting initiative. This has not kicked, I mean, this was delayed like everything else because of COVID. But they really are thinking of an alternative stock exchange, and they got the paperwork and they're starting doing it. But the premise is that modern company should be measured on the progress that they will make over decades, not quarter. And that the investor will invest in this perspective and with this understanding, and that the values will not be only on the EBITDA, but will be on employees, customer, supplier, and the communities that is around them, and that they have to be right, do right for society. So I think that there is an entire movement. We know that we're burning our resources, we're burning the energy. We need to do something else. We need to change the premise and change the definition of success.
Catherine, merci de nous avoir rejoint. Thank you for joining us today.
Mais de rien, bien sûr.
Bien sûr. So before we get into, before I want to get into some business issues, just want to know a little bit more about you, and particularly as it relates, you talked a little bit about where we are in this global pandemic. I'm kind of curious as to how you personally are seeing your own habits changing as anecdotes, and what's been disrupted forever, and what things are you focusing your time on to succeed? Because as the former mayor of Chicago, Rahm Emanuel, said, never let a good crisis go to waste. So I'm kind of curious how you're taking in this entire global pandemic.
So first of all, guys, the good news, we made it to September.
Hey!
I'm sorry, but 2020 has been a very strange year. I mean, obviously for all of us, but also for me. I went from going 100 miles an hour to basically be confined at home because I left Revlon at the end of January. So everything collided at the same time. So I thought I was going to spend 6 months because I'm under a non-compete under the sun. And guess what? I was at home like everybody else, trying to cook dough and aka bread. And
sourdough bread, that was the magic one.
Oh yeah. Increasing my alcohol intake and a few other things.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Exactly. A few revelations about myself, which is good now versus when I will ever retire. I will stop saying that when I have time, I will exercise. I mean, clearly the last 6 months I had plenty of time and I'm still not exercising. So that's something that's busted. I've read everything that I wanted to read. I can't read anymore. And I never thought that I would say that I would be TV tapped out. I'm done. I can't turn on the TV anymore. So there's few things that, urban legend that I had that, I could never stop watching Netflix. Guess what? Yeah, no, I'm not doing this anymore. So that's on a personal revelation kind of things. But to be honest, the pandemic, as for everyone, has created a lot of confusion, a lot of reflection. And now there is a need for action. I think that on top of it, because of my background and where my friends and families are, some of them are in Asia, some of them are in Europe, and some of them are here. I see the world splitting more and more. In the past, I mean, until now, you had the Americana that was basically the holy grail, and that was the way that everybody wanted to live. And now you see those three continents, and I'm sorry for the others, but those three are the ones that I'm watching closely that are splitting, and hopefully they won't be fighting against each other. But when you see that Europe has provided an answer to this pandemic and all the consequences with a coalition, a stronger solution to keep the countries together, to keep the people working together, to get a vaccine together, but also coming out of the economic crisis through a sustainable solution, putting billions of euros, almost, I think it's 150 billion euros in green initiative. So that was, to me, very interesting. On the other side, you have Asia, which is mainly China, to be honest. Those guys are looking to grow aggressively. They still have in their mirror the American example. They want to go there, which we all know is a bit tired at best. So, you know, when Xi Jinping in 2012 said that he wanted to increase the standard of living and the improvement of the quality of life, that's what he's trying to do. He's not applying the 2008 solution of giving money to the consumers of China, which are Europe and US, trying to boost internal consumption. So let's see what happens, because if this doesn't happen, I mean, he has 600 million people earning $150 a month. So clearly there is room for consumption there to make sure that the economy is stable and the, you know, the Communist Party stays where it is in place, basically. But this will have implication on a macro level, obviously, and on a climatic level. If everybody consumes like America, 4% of the population, 25% of the consumption, we have a problem. And finally, America. I mean, like, you know, like I said, I used to say to Shri, I became American fighting for it. I've really waited for that. And with that, I've taken the history of America and everything that goes with it. And when I see what is happening, we face tremendous challenges. We have an environmental crisis. I mean, obviously the fires in California are what they are. COVID is also a zoonotic disease. So we all had to realize that. But as you know, CPG, to go back to your podcast, guys, this has massive implication: healthcare, allergies, disease, food supply challenges, ability to work and live in certain places. Sheltering is going to be a problem. Energy consumption and transportation. I mean, we have issues communicating with California because the phone lines are melting. I mean, it's ridiculous. And obviously the financial impact. I mean, I used to live in Florida. Florida real estate contributes 22% to the state GDP. It's 30% of the fiscal revenue, okay? Home ownership is 42% of everybody's net worth. In the next 10 years, they're thinking that this will go down by $30 billion. Talk about lipstick and cream now. I mean, so those are things with healthcare, almost 200,000 people dead, the highest rate per capita, except Brazil and Russia, which we don't know.
India is catching up these days.
Yeah, you know, we're a nice neighborhood. But this is a country that spent $3.5 trillion a year, which is, to put into perspective, it's almost 18% of our GDP. It's twice the amount per capita than the number 2, which is Japan, which has the oldest population in the developed world. And yet America is between ranked number 25 and 37 in quality of you know, medical results. I mean, we have life expectancy shrinking. We have healthcare is not democratic. You have money, you have healthcare. You don't have money, you don't have healthcare in this country. We've seen it. No employment, no health. It's a system that is based on fee-for-services, and therefore abuse is common. So when you see that, in addition to the economic crisis that we face now with over 10% of the population that is out of job, but also some of those jobs are not COVID jobs. Some of the job was just structural destruction associated with robotics and AI. We have a duty to be part of the change. I mean, granted, NASDAQ is doing fine. I mean, went down a bit, but it's completely an illusion. It's only a fraction of what America is. Most of the businesses hurting right now are not in NASDAQ, are not on Wall Street. 50% of the population don't even have stock. And most of the people who have stock is because of 401k. So we need to stop to use this as a barometer as well, because it doesn't represent the health of our economy or our businesses, and therefore our consumer. And so we have to stop thinking that there is this magic fairy somewhere that's going to come and save us. Like Adam Smith is killing us right now with the magic hand. I don't know where the hand is, but it's not here because it's not helping us. So we have to change this, and we have to be part of the change. We all are executive. We all have power. Clearly, with what is happening today, we need to shift. We have the same economic profile as a country that in the 20s and 30s. So we need to reinvent and redefine what is consumer protection, because now we have privacy issues with social media and everything else. We need to redefine the rules of market economy because we have flagrant monopolistic situation. Thank you, Mark Zuckerberg, to tell us that you're buying off the competition so that you are alone in your area. I mean, we have to redefine also redistribution of income and taxes, because now it's not on production anymore, it's on data. So this is also associated with, in America specifically, with the social and almost social crisis because of a demographic shift. Our population is changing. We went from a baby boomer generation to a millennial Gen Z population, which is completely different priorities, different background, different reality, different color. So we have to also address that. And finally, a democratic crisis. I mean, it's incredible. We have voting censorship. Now the post office can handle what? Only half of the 45% of the voting population in America. It's representing about 100 million people, right? Just to give you an idea, the post office managed 500 million pieces a day. And we're saying that they can't handle 100 million, even if everybody was going. Everybody that went last time did by mail. They can't handle 100 million pieces of postage over a few weeks period. I mean, seriously. Dark money, unchecked presidential power, the court system, and the fact that Trump is the 5th president that has not been elected by the popular vote. I mean, you asked me if I had time to reflect. Yes. Do you think I am confused? Yes. I am vacillating between being upset and being depressed. The only thing I know is I need to be part of the solution. I can't just look the other way, take my paycheck, and enjoy life.
Just mark this down that this is the first time that both Adam Smith and Mark Zuckerberg were mentioned in the same podcast, or frankly, ever in our podcast. And second of all, I'm a little disappointed because you told me Catherine was going to come to this podcast with points of view, and I'm really sensing ambivalence here.
Holding back, sorry guys.
No, Catherine, we love it.
She's quiet. She's quiet and reserved, very much like me. That's why we got along awesome well at Revlon. But Catherine, the next question I had for you, I think you've already answered it, and I want to try and sum it up for our audience, and you can tell me if I'm wrong or not. You know, the question was a simple one, right? Over the course of your life, which in a corporate setting, if you could go back 20 years, it's your first job now, and what you would tell a Catherine starting out in a career all the way back, you know, in L'Oreal. And to me, what it sounds like you would tell that Catherine is deliver performance with purpose, not performance with purpose is in focus just on the EBITDA and deliver the profit. You have to do that anyway. That's why you signed up for a role that you do. But life is about 57 and a half other things that you named, all the way from geopolitics to how a country is run to the economic state of the world. And there's another hidden gem that I want to mention for our listeners over here. And that is, we are in an ecosystem, folks, which is global. Get to know what is happening in the world around you. And when I told Peter, we'd love to have Catherine on this show, Peter didn't know what to expect. She just knows this worldly economic stuff, bro. She just knows this stuff. So thank you. Tell me if I got that wrong, Catherine. And that's what you tell Catherine when she started her career in L'Oreal, deliver performance with purpose.
He answers everyone's questions for them, Catherine, but go ahead.
Yeah, I think I would say that. I think that the only thing is I'm not sure she will listen, but that's another problem altogether. I think I would definitely say that, but you know, it's very difficult to change the behavior without changing the outcome. And I am where I am today because I did what I did or didn't do what I didn't do. So I think that it is important for everybody to realize that you're just not born naturally one way. I'm old enough, I'm extremely young, let's be clear, no, I'm kidding. But I'm old enough to realize that I came here because I went through a lot of things, and I'm very grateful for that. One thing that life has shown me is that everything is possible. I started in a very humble household, and I'm here now, and I'm very lucky in life. But there is also one thing, which is they don't teach you in school, that there is no silver bullet. There is no one answer. There's many ways to get where you need to be, even not knowing where you want to be, by the way, which is my reality. I didn't know where I wanted to be. So, I think what is important is to keep the ability to integrate new information and be aware of what is called confirmation bias. Because the older you get, but even, depending on what culture you're from, you shortcut, right? You want efficiency, you want to go fast. And confirmation bias are the worst. They're the worst because you live in the past and you live with somebody else's reality. So it is important to, specifically 2020 reminded us that there is no playbook. You just write it. You are the writer of your own playbook. It's, again, very cliche. But the only thing I focus on now is so what and what for. I don't ask myself why anymore. I ask myself what for.
What a great statement, Peter.
Yeah, absolutely. That's tremendous. Let's talk a little bit about Shri has mentioned going back and talking to yourself as you were entering the workforce. Let's talk a little bit about your career span. You've obviously had a tremendous amount of experience in the beauty space, from luxury beauty, fragrances, cosmetics, some luxury footwear, and then you started off as a key account manager in Latin America, and would like to kind of understand some pivotal moments, or how you evolved your career to get yourself to where you were actually the president of North America for Revlon.
That's a loaded question, but I think that people call it, or assume rather, that it's wisdom or courage. In my case, it was just ignorance. It was mainly ignorance because I believe I could do it. I mean, I never thought that I would do it without making mistake, because I sincerely believe, again, a very cliche things to say, that you learn more from your mistake than your successes. But I always thought that I could bounce back, either by working hard or asking for help. Shri knows I have no problem saying, I don't know, I made a mistake, need help. These are three things that I have no qualms about. So, but the only thing is, when we make mistake, there is a commitment, right, with everyone around, which is don't be proud, don't be stubborn, have a backup. And actually, I would say 90% of the time I go to it's at the end, it's the backup plan that happens to be going on. It's not the first plan that I have made. So I'm used to backup plan. Assure that there is no human casualty. That's something that comes from my grandmother. You do whatever happened. I mean, what happened to you, it's your problem. No human casualty. And assume the consequences of your decision. You are tall enough and you're adult enough to make decision, deal with it. And also you have the responsibility to learn from it. So I think that, as I said, I was ignorant enough and naive enough to assume that nothing was impossible. The other thing is luck, and more than luck, it's fortunate encounters. I met people, and I still to the day talk to them, and they still coach me in a way, or mentor me, or try to calm me down in some cases. People who believed in me, or just let me be. Some of them are like, okay, just
try to calm her down. She says, I wonder who on this podcast would know how to do that.
Yeah, exactly. I also was lucky to find people to help me and fought with me, things that were not obvious. Also, people who care enough about me to tell me the truth, especially when it hurts, and especially knowing my personality, which is to never go down and always fight back. So I have to thank those people, including my husband, that doesn't put up with any of my BS. And also is as Estee Lauder say, I was prepared to be lucky. I always, again, work ethics from my grandmother, work hard, and then be lucky. But I have to admit, I was very lucky. And also, to be honest, I was in a period in the economy where if you were mobile, if you were ready to move around, it was also positive. So that's why I moved around I think within 18 years of L'Oreal, I had 8 or 9 jobs, and you know, after that Louboutin, after that Revlon. So that's also give something. So again, you know, be good, work hard, take the chances, don't be scared. Nobody knows what's going on. Just try to figure it out and enjoy. God knows 2020 told us to enjoy and never take anything for granted.
I heard you say about seeking feedback and having mentors. Some of the best advice I ever got was from a woman I worked for at CVS. Her name is Melissa Studzinski. And this was after she'd left the company, and I was talking about when I was going to leave CVS. And she said to me, "So who's on your board of directors?" And I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Well, you have to think of yourself as a brand, and you need to think about who you turn to for the feedback. You have different people that are informally mentors of yours. You need to make that a bit more formal. It's not saying you have to hold board meetings and bring people in and do things, but recognizing the people who have contributed to you, telling them that, letting them know, it will only engender more appreciation from them and more contribution to you as a brand, but making sure that you connect with them on a regular basis and seek their feedback. That advice has been one of the most beneficial pieces I've received in my professional career, and I thank Melissa for that every time I talk to her.
It is humbling to hear a senior leader from a corporate setting, you know, come on the show and then reset some expectations and thinking, talk about receiving feedback from others, helping, feeling free to ask questions when not knowing, and also saying, I simply don't know the subject matter, help me. And one of the key words that you kind of mentioned in there, or a statement that you made, a sentence, was no people casualties, or no human casualties as you build your career. So if I ask you to look back, you know, in your career journey, which has obviously spanned many brands and many roles within brands, are there like one or two of these human element moments that stand out in your mind as you either got some coaching, or you were able to give coaching, or you created relationships that lasted a lifetime? Like, I really want to focus on the human element of brand success. And what comes to your mind if I asked you that?
My career has been, to be honest, you spend most of your day thinking about EBITDA, and at the end, the only thing you remember are the people. So it's an interesting question, because yes, I mean, there is many things that come to mind. You know, I was across different region, and I learned different things throughout my life, also because of my level of maturity or immaturity. I think when I was in Latin America, that was my first job with L'Oreal, which was always fascinating to me, that they gave me at 22 or 23 years old, they gave me like 10 countries to manage for massive brands and millions of dollars. And that was the first time and again, my mentor at the time, which was the head of travel retail worldwide, I had the just sheer luck to meet him and be interviewed by him. And this was the guy who later on told me, like you, there's only a few lessons to learn. Number one, you are a brand. The first thing you market is yourself. Number two is whoever you talk to, you need to know their motivation and their business, whatever business means, better than they do. And three, never forget, you're just a face. Your people are really the one doing it.
Yeah.
So that was you know, Eric Loza, who you know, Shri.
Oh, yes.
That. I was pissed at the beginning because I was like, oh, what do you mean I'm a brand? What do you mean, like, whatever? I was 22, so whatever. But no, it was true. And again, the same values of taking care of your people, working hard, and making sure that you own up to what you want to project, right? If you're projecting it, live up to it. So when I was in Latin America, what was interesting is, you know, I was French, young, blonde at the time. And sometimes, and I learned that to be underestimated was a very big advantage, because you can say and do a lot of things and people talk in front of you about things that they wouldn't think you can process. However, I learned also that there is a moment you have to show your teeth, and a few times, before they realize that it's really you biting. So So yes, I learned that, but also for me it was a lesson because as a let's be honest again, as a white person born post 70s, I didn't feel discriminated back at home. I didn't think that I could do less or I was not treated as much except by my cousin, my Italian cousin, but those guys were shorter than I was, so of course I could beat them up. So that was the way to do it. But you know what I mean, like but I realized that people may not you will be surrounded by people that have a different appearance, different culture, different of expressing themselves. And sometimes is to not shine, sometimes is to be very shy, but never judge the book by the cover because those guys have always something to give. By learning it by the hard way, I was like, what do you mean you're challenging my intelligence? What? I realized that a lot of people were feeling that way and I was doing it to others, probably. So since then, I really learned to not do it. The other thing is I went to China, I was head of Asia Pacific and I had Lancôme. China was a big market to the day, 60% of the worldwide growth for the brand at the time, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, the zone. Big day, March 8th, Women's Day, big promotion. Just after Chinese New Year, so your customer have already bought a boatload of product. So you have to either recruit or allow them to buy even more, either by upselling, link selling, et cetera, et cetera. So big promotion. So we reviewed everything with the team, very smart team, excellent team, KPIs, volume, transaction, IPT, US, new recruitment, return, la, 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 la. Then comes the day and then I see the promotion and I fall off my chair. I thought I was oh my God, I thought I was gonna die. I mean, the promotion was so not on brand. I was gonna kill somebody, to be honest. And I went to my team and I was like, not happy. And I was like, how do you dare hiding this from me? We are a French luxury brand. Why are you doing this? And the GM at the time, and I was doing this one-on-one with a GM, right? She's a smart person, but she's smarter than I am, to be honest. But she was very generous. She was used to all those French people running around pretending they knew what China was, but in fact, no. So she said to me, Catherine, if you're not smart enough to ask the question, in China, you don't deserve the answer. Oh. And that's not a Chinese lesson. That's a worldwide lesson that I will never forget. The other thing that I learned as a marketing person, well, I was not marketing, but there's a marketing in me, is that this promotion, we did a post-mortem, of course, as everything else, because we generated millions of dollars in a day. The customer realized this was not a typical French on-brand promotion, but they perceived it as Lancôme French brand knows and listens to Chinese women. Therefore, on Women's Day, we trust Lancôme. So even the perception that we have sometimes is associated with our culture. And for me, promotion equals something. For Chinese women, it meant something else because this was a foreign brand coming into their country which had not been respected for decades, not to say century. For them, this was not high luxury the French way, which is the reason why they bought the brand, but this was a signal of, we are hearing you, we're loving you, and we're giving you what we know you want. So again, second big lesson for me from China.
Brilliant. So much to unpack.
You have succeeded in doing what close to 30 episodes have not succeeded in doing, which is get Peter and Shri to quietly listen without interrupting.
Yeah, that's a little different. I think it's on me, Shri, so I'll jump in. You mentioned in one of your previous comments about failure. And I've always believed that that we should celebrate failure from a learning perspective. Like I tell anyone who works for me, if something goes wrong, we're gonna make a big deal about it in terms of sharing with everybody what went wrong. Not from the purpose of trying to point blame or anything else, but to bring light to issues and to make sure it doesn't happen again. So I'm curious from your perspective, as you think back where is test and learning been productive? It seems like in the last example you gave, you thought it was going to fail, but boy, did it succeed. So how have you
I didn't know
ensured?
what's going on. So
Yeah.
that's the
So
number
how do you
realize, and I
ensure?
thought it was bad, and three, so I was wrong all the way. So yeah.
How do you ensure now that you've experienced that, how do you ensure that the opportunity to test, learn, fail, and then iterate can happen for success?
Well, first, I don't call it failure because maybe it's my English, right? I don't think it's, for me, failure is yes, but no.
Yeah.
For me, failure is when you don't learn, is when you hurt somebody. That's failure. Otherwise, it's just a mistake, an error, a course correction, the opportunity for a course correction. And I truly believe that. I was, again, raised in a way where I was told, do it, have a backup plan, correct. And then that's your duty, is to correct. You're not born with intrinsic knowledge. And the life is moves on. And if you see pattern, you need to know your history not to repeat it, but it doesn't mean that history will repeat itself. Therefore, you need to invent, and again, confirmation bias. It's the equilibrium between thinking things will happen and learning from your past, right? And letting the future happen. So that's why people always either are frozen in the past or just ignore it. And this is the fine balance. I love to learn from my predecessor. I never judge what they've done before because you never know why things happen. You always try to understand what happened and what are the circumstances, but you never know 100% of it. You learn from it, you move on, and you do your own action. What I said to my team is try, but the only thing I'm asking from you is communicate and have a backup, and then learn from it. Don't do it twice. Because if you do it twice, it's either because you are stupid, and therefore it's my problem, I need to fire you. Either because you are arrogant, and it's my problem as well, therefore I need to put you back online. Or you have not learned, you have not understood what's going on. In that case, this is, again, our responsibility, and we need to do it together. So I think if you do that, I have no problem. I think that it's you need to do it fast, and you need to cut bait fast. That's the only thing. You cannot be stubborn in your mistake. And again, the other thing is you have to own it. There was a moment, and the reason why I say that is because there was an example where when I was in Lancôme USA, I allowed to be forced to do something. There was a product launch, I did not believe in it. I was convinced to do it anyway. It failed for the reason we had identified it was not working because the consumer need were not met. It didn't meet the brand ethos in the country. Therefore, it was a cognitive dissonance. It was not going to work. It was just making not sense. I went with it. I fought a bit, but went with it. And at the end, it didn't work. When our CEO came back, fast forward 2 months, the CEO came back and realized it was not working. He was like, what the hell are you doing, guys? And he obviously consumer insights telling him exactly that it was not going to work. And it didn't work for those reasons. He looked at me and said, what the hell are you doing? And I didn't say anything because I had to own it. But my lesson learned are, number one, if you have to fail, if you have to make a mistake, it's make a mistake that you own in the sense that you believe in. So you can learn from it. So you don't feel bad when the door, smack you, because you will have door smack in your face. So when it happened, you will say, you know what, fair game. I thought it was right, but didn't happen. But don't do it if you don't believe it. Otherwise, you're really suicidal. The second thing is, again, cut bait fast. We had a backup plan, so we made the number because we knew this was not gonna, I believe it was not gonna happen. The third thing is, don't expect support. Just hope for it. And when you get it, maybe from your bosses, your colleagues, your team, and in that case, my team knew it, be very thankful.
So Catherine, I heard you say a lot of things there about failure, accepting it, having a backup plan, getting into new turf. You talked about not being afraid, and you also talked about people making sure that if you make a mistake, learn from it and try not to repeat it. Because if you repeat it, you're either arrogant or you're just not a good listener, whatever the case might be. So, our 45 minutes here has just vanished into thin air, but that's what happens when you have good conversation and the conversation is very stimulating. But I have one last question for you, which is actually, I'm putting a lot of what you said in a box, and we're going to bring this into the CPG brands and the retail ecosystem. And the big question is, when, if I go back about a year and a half in history, when you and I first met, you hired me to come in and lead e-commerce for Revlon. And obviously there was a pivotal moment in both our lives from what we wanted to do in terms of those set of brands. But more importantly, I feel in the industry's largely ignored e-commerce in North America, A, because of fear, and B, because you've already used the word just being ignorant about it and not really wanting to get into a new turf, largely EBITDA anchored and related. What is your piece of advice, especially now that, we are deep into a pandemic and a lot of shopping habits, wrong or right, good or bad, forced or not, have moved the omni-channel way? Is omni-channel retail the way of the future? And in there, I'd love for you also to address a second piece of that, which is what is the role of D2C for brands? Because, over my course of the last 10 years being on the digital side of the fence versus brick and mortar, D2C, I've touched brands with different purpose in D2C. It's not for everyone yet. In 2020, the only vehicle really how you can establish loyalty in a relationship. So what's your advice in general for brands when it comes to the business of being in retail?
So, that's a vast question, but it's true that the retail evolution is continuing, but it's just faster. It's happening faster. The retail pool is shrinking, we all know. The environment is changing because of the online, as we all know also. But we also have brands that are pure, they started with no in-store experience. They went straight for online. We have also a verticalization of the brands, which is back to the future, matter of speaking. This was history, then we went to wholesale, now it's back to verticalization. I think in commerce, you will have different reality based on price point or if it's a basic replenishment, low price point, I think it's going to have to be a click and pick kind of a game for the people who can afford it. For the others, Walmart, 75% of transactions are done in cash, so they are still going to happen in store. For the high price point, the situation is going to be different. E-commerce may become 50% of the business. But I think that some of the brands are not 100% ready for that. We know that. And that's what is a bit surprising, because in luxury, e-commerce started 20 plus years ago. I think I lost
what do you do, Catherine, if you're not ready? Do you say it's okay? Or do you now wake up and say, I have no choice, I have to be ready?
Well, but that's what I'm saying is if you are a high price point specifically, you have to do it. You have to do it, but you cannot just think about e-commerce. You have to think about social commerce, and you have to think about voice as well. Because I think that we need to realize that and let's talk about high price point in beauty. It's about emotionality. It's not only about removing the friction, right? In low price point, e-commerce makes it easier for me. But in luxury, it's emotionality. And today, we are buying on e-commerce. We're not shopping on e-commerce in most cases. Some brands have managed to do it, but we need to go further. What they say about media is retail and retail is media. I think that most brands have not realized the potential because they didn't have to. They were working on it, but they didn't push hard enough. So now because of what is happening with the pandemic, they have to wake up and smell the roses. And what does it mean? Yes, voice, it means VR, it means augmented reality, it means, and beyond the virtual try-on beauty, real AI, but it means also a shopping experience that is seamless, without button, accuracy, understanding, trust. The customized just for you, the language barrier needs to be removed, the digital inclusion needs to be there. There's certain things that needs to be flawless. And I see this more happening in Asia than I see in the US, but we need to speed up in the US, obviously. and this is something that is really the big potential, the big opportunity for brands that can afford e-commerce. At a lower price point, e-commerce is a media. E-commerce, it's research, it's learning from your customer and your customer base, and it's also teaching. It's teaching your customer, your users, any professional that may use your product, but it's not commerce per se, because your price point won't allow the economic equation to be workable for D2C on your own brand. I mean, that's my
golden words. And I want to, as we wrap up this episode, remind all our listeners that you can find all our content on cpgguys.com. And as I mentioned right at the opening of this episode, if you scroll down on cpgguys.com, you're going to find our YouTube playlist. You're going to find us on several podcasting platforms, including the all famous Apple, where we'd love for you to go to tinyurl.com/Apple CPG podcast and actually give us a listen and a review and rating if you could. And we want to thank you also for listening into us and quickly growing our organic following. Peter, I want to thank you as always for coming on the show week over week and doing this with me.
Shri, a couple things today. One, I think we need to establish an esteemed faculty of learning through the CPG Guys podcast, and the chair of that department is clearly going to be Catherine. Second of all, I think I need to open up a board seat on PVSB, though I don't think I can afford her. But in any event, Catherine, nous sommes très reconnaissants de votre sagesse. We're very grateful for the wisdom you shared with us today.
I have no idea what he said.
I just translated it for you after I said it. But merci beaucoup for joining us. I am so pleased to meet you. And Shri, as always, this has just been a fabulous journey, and today's another shining example of why we love to do this, because you and I learned so much.
And Catherine, I want to thank you in particular for one thing, which is going to stand out in my mind after this episode for a very long time, which is why I feel when we worked together in a previous corporate journey, we got along very well, which is you are a gutsy person. And very rare do I come across senior leaders in a corporate setting who are willing to speak their mind and put reality and facts out there so that a brand can deliver a higher purpose of delivering quality products at value for a consumer. On the CPG Guys, that's what we try to do, encourage brands to transform in their journey of delivering quality products at value to a consumer. But Catherine, sincerely, I want to thank you not just for the guts, but the wisdom you have imparted. And we hope to see you back again soon, because the fun barely began and we really haven't got into deep business questions on omni-channel retail, in the beauty segment, in the cosmetics section, in the luxury fashion. We just have so much more to ask you. So we hope you'll come back for another episode soon. With that, thank you, folks, and do tune in to us at cpgguys.com.
Thank you.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.